Hi everybody, and welcome back to another tutorial. Today we are going to build from scratch a complete functional accounts payable module right inside Microsoft Access. To save a bit of time, I've already created a couple of tables, and these you can create yourself really quickly. You don't need a lot of information on them. I've created one employee table and one a vendor table, accounts payable vendors table. All that's on the vendor table really is just the vendor's name. If you want to put an address and city, that's fine. We want these names on here because we're going to want to create a drop-down menu in our final accounts payable form that simply allows a user to scroll through and pick an approved vendor to make a bill for. Okay, and same thing with the employee table. Again, you don't need a lot of information here. A name, if you just want to put employee name, that's fine too. I've got some other fields here. Some of them are empty. Again, on our final form, we just want to have a field there so that whatever employee happens to be working accounts payable that day, if they're entering into our system a bill payment, or pardon me, a bill from a vendor, we want to know what employee entered that, so they would just go down the list and select their name. So that's the purpose of those two tables. Okay, now to begin, again, we want to start every project with sort of an end in mind. What's it going to look like before we start building something? So our final invoice form, if you think about just any sort of bill or an invoice that you've ever seen, you've got two main parts really. The top part will have things like the date, a bill number, a name of the vendor, the customer, whatever that may be, and then the center portion of the bill or the invoice will have more details in it, such as the description of the goods or the products purchases, perhaps a quantity line in there, and of course a dollar amount. And then lastly, you'd want to have something that would have a subtotal of all the amounts, and then the applicable taxes, and then your grand total. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a table that is going to be designed for the top portion of our accounts payable bill. So we're going to create a manual table. So inside Access here, go to the Create tab, select Table, and I always like to build things in Access using the design view rather than this datasheet view that Access defaults to. Just to change views, simply right-click, then select Design View, and now we want to give it a name. So we're going to call this one AP Vendor Table. Here, pardon me, AP Voucher Table. We've already got our vendor table. So AP Vendor or Voucher Table. Okay, AP Voucher Table. Okay, and this is going to be the top of our voucher form, our accounts payable form. Okay, select OK. And now we're in design view, and by default, you can see here this little gold key here. If you're not aware, this indicates a primary key. So whenever we are working with databases and we want to connect relationships between the tables, we need to do that by using both a primary key and a foreign key from another table, which we'll get into a little bit later on in this video. But what's really important, guys, is that you have to have very unique, specific names. You can't be duplicating their names on here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to rename this, and we're going to call it AP Voucher. Whoops. AP Voucher ID. Okay, and we leave it as an automatic number. Okay. Next thing we're going to want on our form is we're going to have the date of the bill. Okay, and for this, we're going to use a date and time function as our data type. What this will do is when the user is tapping down through the form, a little calendar icon will pop up, and they can just simply point and click on the day. Now, the next thing we want to know is who the employee is that's entering this in. Pardon me, actually, no, we want our vendor bill number. That's important. So, for example, you open your mail, you look at the bill, and you'll see who it's from, and then they will have a bill number on the top, which is their invoice. And what we want to do here is we're going to leave the data type as a short text rather than just a number. The reason we want to do that is occasionally, sometimes, if you're looking at invoices, you won't just have a number on there. Sometimes vendors will mix in letters with their numbers or have dashes. So you want to be able to have some short text in there that will allow you to key any sort of characters or items that you may need to. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to want to have now is the employee. So who is entering this information? And this is where we're going to create our first relationship between this voucher table and the employee table that we set up. So to do that, we'll tab over to data type, and we're going to use something in Access called a lookup wizard. So we'll go down to the bottom here. We'll select lookup wizard. We will leave the default as I want the lookup field to get the values from another table or query. So just select next. And then we want to choose the table that contains the data that we want. And we know that we want the employee name. That would be found in our employee table. So we'll highlight that. Select next. And we only want to pull over two fields here. Okay, we just want the employee ID to create the connection and the employee name. Select next. And in this section, this is where we're going to choose what item is going to be available in our final form in the drop-down menu. So what we're going to want to appear is the actual employee's name in there. Okay, so we'll select employee. Select next. And now this gives you a little bit of a preview here. So we can see now all the names of the employees that we created. This is what's going to be available for the end user in the form to select when they get to that field. We'll select next. And we always want to check this little box here, enable data integrity. What that does is that prevents essentially the user from just entering anybody's name. They actually have to use a name that's been authorized and entered into the system. And we'll select finish. Now we want to save the relationship before it can be the table before the relationship can be created. We'll say yes. And then we want to go up here to the little disk icon and select save. Okay. Now, before we move any further, anytime I make a modification, an addition, a change, or build a relationship within the program that I'm building, I want to make sure that I've done it correctly, and I want to be able to go in and test it or review it to make sure that I'm getting the required outcome. So to do that here, we're going to go to Database Tools, and we're going to select Relationships. And we can see here, we've got our two tables. We've got the AP voucher table and the employee table. And we've now made a relationship between these two so that the employee's name, when we do the lookup, will be pulled from the employee table. Okay, we will save this. And we'll close it. All right, and then the last thing we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to enter a field for the actual vendor, like who's the bill from. So we'll type in vendor. Now we're going to need to create another relationship because we're going to need to go over to the accounts payable vendor table, find the name of the vendor, and pull it over into our final form. So we're going to use the same function again, the lookup wizard, to do that. And we'll leave this as a default to select values from another table. And we want to get it right here from our accounts payable vendor table. Select next. And we only want two fields. We want the vendor ID and the vendor name. Select next. And again, for our final form, what we want to appear as an available item is the vendor name. That's what we want to see. Select next. Now we get a little preview here. And these are the list of vendors that I've created that will be available for the end user. Now again, it's important to remember you can always, later on, of course, you can go into the system and add more vendors as you start to deal with more suppliers. That's totally okay. Let's just get us started. We'll select next. And again, we want to check the enable data integrity so that nobody can just start to enter in random vendors into the final form. And we'll select finish. And we want to save it. Yes. Then we want to save it up here. Yes, we do. Now, let's have another look. Go to Database Tools, select our relationships, and now we can see we've created a relationship between the accounts payable vendor table. Let's just move things around a little bit so everybody can see what's going on. There we go. All right. So now, on the voucher at the top, when we select employee, it's going to go over here and grab the name, and then we get here to the vendor. It's going to pull it from the vendor table that we've created. So we're in good shape. Let's save it and close it. Okay, so that's all the information that we need on that table, and that's going to represent the top portion of our accounts payable form. So let's close that. And we just need now to build one more table, and this is going to be the accounts payable, the AP voucher detail table. This is where we're going to have a list of our description of goods. We'll have a field there for the quantity and, of course, the amount. So again, we're going to do this manually. So let's select Create Table. And just as we did before, we're going to change this from the datasheet view to the design view here. And we're going to name it, and we're going to call this AP Voucher Detail Table. Okay, and we'll select OK. And you'll see here we've got our default ID. So we want to change the name of that. We just want to call this AP Voucher Detail ID. Okay, so that's good. Now we want to get the AP voucher number, and we're going to pull that over from the voucher table. So we're going to call this AP voucher number. We'll go over here, and we're going to select Lookup Wizard again. We'll get the queries from another table, yes, and we're going to get this from our voucher table. We'll select Next. And all we want here is the we want the AP voucher ID. We'll select Next. We'll leave that blank. Select Next. Again, it's blank because we haven't created any invoices yet, and those will fill in as we build those out. Select Next, and of course we want to enable data integrity, and then select Finish. We'll save it, and we'll save it again. We don't need to check the relationship on this because we've already, we've previously created a relationship here, but let's just have a quick look here. Since it's a new table, go to Relationships, and we'll pull over our detail table right here because I don't think we have that over here. There we go. All right, so let's maneuver this around a little bit. It's great having this flexibility to sort of sort things out to make it easier to look at. There, okay, so now we'll pull over whatever the voucher ID number is. We'll get pulled over to this, this table, which is what we want. Save it and close it. All right, so next, now we're going to want to put here, we're going to want to have a field called Description of Goods and Services. Now, for the sake of time, we're going to just create a list of possible expenses like rent, insurance, telephone, office supplies, those types of things. Typically, you would have a table, which would be considered a chart of accounts, and then you'd look up a lookup wizard and be able to pull those things over. But we're just going to save a little bit of time here. We're just going to create the list ourselves. So for description, in the field name, we're going to call it Description of Goods and Services. Okay, now I'm just going to widen this column here a little bit so I can see everything. Now to create this list, we're going to use the lookup wizard again, but we're going to make a slight modification because we don't want to pull the information from another table. We just want to create our own customized list. So we'll go down to lookup wizard, and if you remember from the previous relationship that we were creating, we left it at the default up here. So now we want to go down here. We want to select, I will type in the values that I want. And we'll select Next. And, we'll just start to enter in some rent types or expense types. So we'll put in rent, then utilities, telephone, insurance, office supplies, okay, maybe we've got postage and freight. Okay, and we could have one here for professional fees. Okay, and that's okay for now. That's all we're going to need. Again, we can always go back as the business starts to incur new vendors and new maybe expense items or expense lines. We can go back and we can create those or add those to this table, and that will automatically become an available field within our final form. Okay, so let's select next. And we want to limit to the list because we don't want anybody overriding what's there. We want to be able to control our data, and we'll select finish. Okay, so now we've just got two more fields that we have to create. One will be for quantity and the other will be for amount. So we'll just type in quantity. And for that data type, we're going to select number. And then lastly, we want amount. Okay, and for here, let's format this as currency. So we're going to have a dollar sign on it. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of our voucher detail table. We've got our detail ID, we've got our voucher number, descriptions of goods and services that we've created a list for, a quantity as a number, and then amount as a currency. And let's save it, and let's close it. All right, so lastly now, what we're going to do is we're going to create our final form. But please make sure if you have any tabs open here, please close them all. The reason I always say that is because if you get working on too many tabs or things at once, you could end up making cross-references or causing errors that'll just really create a nightmare for you down the road. Okay, so to create our final form, let's begin first of all by just highlighting the AP voucher table. We don't want to open it, we just want it highlighted. And then we're going to go to create. We'll go to the form section and we want to select form wizard. So because we highlighted this table, by default when we selected our form wizard, all these items came up. Now we're going to want all of these available fields to be on our final form. So we'll select the double arrows and pull everything over. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to go back up here to the drop-down menu. And we want to select our AP voucher detail table. And, excuse me, from here we want the description of goods. We want the quantity. And we want the amount. Okay, so having a quick review of our selected fields, we've got the AP voucher ID, we've got the date of the bill, the vendor's bill number, the employee, who the vendor is, a description of the goods and services that we're purchasing, the quantity, and the amount. Let's select next. Now, this is a great little preview of exactly what our final form is going to look like. And I don't know if you can see it on the screen here on the recording, but inside the large gray box, you'll see sort of a smaller one here. And you'll see here form with subforms, and that's what we've created here. So in the top part of our form for accounts payable, we have the voucher ID, the date of bill, the vendor bill number, employee and vendor, which is what we want. And then in the midsection of the form, we're going to have our description of goods and services, our quantity and amount. So let's select next. We're going to leave this as a data sheet view. And now what we want to do here is we want to name the top form. Leave the subform name alone. Let's just go in here and change this. And we're going to call it accounts payable form. Nice and simple. Okay, and we will select finish. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to save it and close it. And then I want to come down here to where my form is. Now you'll notice that this forms menu just magically appeared, and then we've got two forms under it. One says accounts payable form, and the other one says accounts payable voucher detail form. Those are now sort of all contained. We've got that's a subform within our final form. So the user is going to be using this accounts payable form. So we'll open that up, and let's tab down because we're going to check all the fields. And here's where we have our date of bill. So let's check that out. There's a little icon for our calendar. Great. Let's select the date. Okay. Now the vendor's bill came in. Let's say it's their bill number, for example, is 7463. Doesn't matter. We can key in whatever we want. And if we had a letter there and a dash, it allows us to do that. The reason it does that is because we just selected, if you recall, when we chose the data type, we just left it as short text. So we can key in anything that happens to be, or represents rather, our vendor's invoice number. Here's our employee list. Let's make sure that's functioning. Yep, have a list of employees here. And then we come down to our vendor. Here's our list of approved vendors. Perfect. Okay, so let's go to these folks here. And now we've got things kind of scrunched up here a little bit. So I'm going to sort of stretch my subform out a little bit. So to make a modification to that, I'm going to go up here to the tab, right click, and I'm going to select Layout View. I'll click anywhere in the body here. And now you can see I've got this sort of gold outline around the box. I'll get my arrows here. I'll hold down my left mouse button, hold down, click, and just drag that over. Just give myself a bit of room. There we go. And then let's widen this column for description of goods and services. There we go. All right, and before we go any further, let's switch it back to Form View and save. Now, let's go down here to our descriptions of goods and services. Hit the drop-down menu, and you can see everything that we've programmed in here. It's here. It's working. Okay. So we'll select rent, select quantity. Now, I want to demonstrate something here. Let's say the company was, I don't know, didn't pay or didn't get a bill, and it was going to pay for 2 months' rent. Great. So it's 2 months' rent, and it's at $5,000 each. Okay. Now we got a problem because it's just putting in the amount. We don't want to sit here and add up. So what we're going to need to do is we are going to need to put in another column in here to do a calculation that's going to sum or total, the quantity times the amount. So let's close this a little bit. Okay, let's save it. And to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to the tab. We're going to right click and we're going to go to Design View. And we get this scary looking screen showing up. And our subform is down here, guys. So you'll see this where it says form footer right here. Right? And then there is right here, this white invisible line. That's one where we want to get our mouse and we want to left click. We want to drag this down because what I want to do here is I want to make a little bit of room under this amount field here because we've got our descriptions of goods, quantity and amount, and I want to get something down here for line total. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drag it down, give myself a bit of room. Maybe don't need quite that much. Great. All right, so now we've got some space. Then we're going to go up to the top to the menu. We're going to select Design, and our controls will appear. And what we want to do is we want to go over here to the second one here that says Text Box. We're going to select that, and then we're going to go down anywhere. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be precise at this point. We can align everything a little bit later. But you want to get those crosshairs somewhere under where it says amount. And we'll select. We'll click and two boxes appear. The one on the left is the actual field description. It's telling the user what that is. And then the one that says unbound, that's where we're going to put in our formula to actually calculate it. So first thing we want to do is we want to go over here, click it, and we just want to put in total. Put in total line. And then we'll go over to our unbound box. Okay. Now what we want to do here is we're going to want to give this a name because later on as we build out our program, we're going to want to have we're going to want to be able to differentiate between all these fields and what they are when we're building formulas and codes. So we'll go over here to the All tab under the property sheet. Now if you don't have this property sheet appearing, all right, it's right over here. Okay. In this section, just click on that, it'll open up, go to your Alt tab, and then let's backspace this out and let's name this Total Line Amount. Okay, now we need to put in the formula, so we'll select our Data tab, and right here where it says Control Source, let's click on those three little dots, and this now brings up our expression builder. This is where we're going to enter in our code or our formula. So it's very simple. All we want here is just quantity times amount. Okay, that's all we need to have there. We'll select OK. And now we want to format this because we're going to want it in a currency, dollar format. So we'll select Format. And from the drop-down menu, we will select Currency. All right, perfect. Now let's right-click and save. Okay, now let's go to Form View and see if we did it right. See if everything's working properly. And there we go. So now you can see we've got the amount, quantity 2, and we've got 10,000. Let's just try another line here. Let's say there's 3 months of rent here, 5,000. Okay, and it's 15,000. Great, so we've got everything functioning. Now, we need to also have on our vendor form, accounts payable form, we need to have 3 more fields down here. One for the subtotal, that's going to add up all these total line amounts. Then we need to calculate the HST, or whatever tax, whatever province or state you might be in, and then the grand total. I'm going to do that on a subsequent video because this one's gone on for a little bit, but this will get you started. You'll have your accounts payable form ready to go. And again, if you need to add employees or vendors or anything like that, just by updating the tables and adding things to that, they will automatically appear as options from your drop-down menus. Okay, guys, so I hope you found this really helpful, and check out the next video because we're going to finalize it. We're going to put in the subtotal, the HST or taxes, and the total, and then you're going to be good to go and ready to start entering in bills. Until next time, take care, and we will see you very shortly. Bye now.